Real-Time 1960s presents Evening Report, a complete roundup of today's news with Joe Rubenstein.
Good evening. President Kennedy defends his civil rights record. Secretary Rusk heads to South America. Thousands of women protest nuclear fallout. Senator Goldwater preaches conservatism. Malcolm X preaches racial separation. And John Wayne signs on to a World War II epic. Those are the headlines. The details after this message.
Maris is ready. Here's the pitch. It's going, it's in there. A new Major League record, 61 home runs by Roger Maris.
Hi, kids. That sure was a day for me. Part of the thrill of baseball. The kind of real excitement I've put into my great new game by Pressman, Action Baseball.
The score is 2-2. You're up at bat. Here it comes. A smashing double to left field. Another run batted in. All the skill and excitement of World Series when you play Roger Maris Action Baseball by Pressman. Now you can hit home runs just like Roger Maris.
Yes, kids. There's nothing like the thrill of baseball. And now it's yours.
Get Roger Maris Action Baseball today, $2.98. Oh boy, a Pressman toy.
At his press conference today, President Kennedy defended his delay in signing an executive order prohibiting racial discrimination in federally assisted housing. Twice during the election campaign, Mr. Kennedy pledged to issue such an order as president. Sources indicate that Mr. Kennedy fears that the issuance of such an order now would alienate key Southern congressmen and doom other legislative proposals.
I have stated that I would issue that order when I considered it to be in the public interest and when I considered it to make an important contribution to advancing the rights of our citizens. I will point out that this administration in the last 12 months made more progress in the field of civil rights on a whole variety of fronts than were made in the last 8 years. We have, for example, carried out a great many more suits in voting rights, the appointment of federal employees, judges and their employees, in ending segregation in interstate travel, in terminal facilities, the ICC's work, and the work being done on railroad and airports. So we are proceeding ahead in a way which will maintain a consensus and which will advance this cause. And I think a proper judgment can be made on this and all other matters relating to equality of rights at the end of this year and at the end of our term.
But civil rights groups want action now. Herbert Hill, Labor Secretary of the NAACP, said today, quote, "We can only hope that President Kennedy has not forgotten the promises of Senator Kennedy," unquote. Mr. Hill went on to criticize the president's Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity as quote-unquote impotent in the face of hostile employers, adding that committees of this sort usually just take complaints and do nothing about them. The Nation of Islam, a black nationalist religious organization led by 64-year-old Elijah Muhammad, has a different solution to the race problem: separation. Mr. Muhammad says the U.S. should provide a land grant and funds to his group for a separate black nation. Minister Malcolm X leads Temple No. 7 in Harlem and serves as Mr. Muhammad's national spokesman. Born Malcolm Little in 1925, he explains the X this way, quote, "All who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have given their slave names back to the white man. We've also given him back his whiskey, his dope, his politics, and all his other vices," unquote. Mr. X was in Providence yesterday helping a local mosque organize a caravan to the Muslims' annual convention next month. He was asked by a reporter if the separation he preaches can actually be achieved.
The black man and the white man in America is already separated. The fact that you have second-class citizenship is political separation. The fact that you have black people are the last hired and the first fired is economic separation. The fact that you have discrimination is social separation. And whereas up to now, the white community is the sole benefactor from the form of segregation that exists, we want it separate so that the black man can be benefited as well as the white be benefited.
He was asked if the Nation of Islam, which boasts a karate-trained security force called the Fruit of Islam, advocates violence.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us never to be the aggressor and to always respect and recognize and obey law and law enforcement officers. But then he teaches us if we're ever attacked, we have the religious right to defend ourselves. We don't endorse passive resistance. We don't endorse nonviolence. We don't endorse anything that's advocated by Martin Luther King that has a tendency to strip and disarm our people in this country at a time when the segregationists in the South are not disarmed. And we think that it is wrong to teach black people in America to be nonviolent at a time when someone is not teaching the white man in America also to be nonviolent. We had a situation in Monroe, Louisiana, where our religious services were invaded by the police. They broke into our mosque armed with riot guns, nightclubs, tear gas, and things of that sort, and a fight did follow. And although the Muslims who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad don't believe in carrying any arms whatsoever, Allah did bless us to hospitalize the police who illegally and unjustly and immorally invaded our religious services.
Finally, Mr. X declared that the second-class status of American Negroes today amounts to a modern form of slavery.
Slavery still exists. 20 million black people here in America are still slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War were fought for nothing. And because it was approached in that day in a hypocritical way, Lincoln was faced with the problem. All of the presidents since him, including Kennedy today, is still faced with the same problem because no honest effort has ever been made to solve it, especially by the politicians.
Secretary of State Dean Rusk departs for Uruguay this weekend for a meeting with the Organization of American States. His goal, to establish with the 21 member nations the most effective means of counteracting the Cuban regime of Fidel Castro. The administration believes that one of Castro's primary goals is to overthrow representative governments in Latin America with the aid of the communist bloc. On Friday, Secretary Rusk outlined the administration's goals in the Cold War.
I think it's fair to say that the hemisphere is becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of the penetration of this hemisphere by communism, as reflected in the Cuban situation. We'll be meeting in Punta del Este on the 22nd of this month to consult with the foreign ministers of other hemisphere countries on that particular problem. On some of the critically dangerous problems, such as Berlin and in Southeast Asia. Our object there has been to protect the vital interests of this country and of the free world without war if possible. I think that it is too easy to think that every problem could be solved if we were ready at a moment's notice simply to inject American troops into a particular situation. That is not the way to peace. It is not the way to an orderly world, nor do I believe that the American people ought somehow to be transformed into gendarmes for every dispute in any part of the world if there's an opportunity to bring about a peaceful settlement which is consistent not only with our national interest, but with the peace of the world.
He concluded the interview with some thoughts on the communist-constructed border wall that now divides Berlin.
The control of East Berlin and East Germany was firmly in communist control since the war. Now, they put up the wall, I think without any question, not to keep the West out, but to stop the outflow of East Germans and East Berliners who wanted to come to the West. Here is the great symbol of the type of concentration camp which they have to erect in order to prevent their own people from seeking freedom.
I'll have more news for you after this message.
Sinus congestion. New Super Anahist nasal spray is the only leading spray that is both decongestant and antibiotic too. Kills bacteria on contact. With a cold, bronchial congestion may build up, irritate, so you cough. New Super Anahist cough syrup not only stops the cough for up to 6 hours, but also checks congestion buildup, reduces irritating fluids, breaks up congestion in upper chest.
Stops my cough in minutes.
New Super Anahist decongestant cough syrup.
Here again, Joe Rubenstein.
Several thousand women picketed the White House today to protest the nuclear arms race. President Kennedy observed the rain-soaked demonstrators through a window at the White House. At his press conference, the president was asked if demonstrations of this type are useful and if they had any influence on him.
Well, I think these women are extremely earnest. They talk to, when they are as concerned as we all are, at the possibility of a nuclear war. They talked this morning to Mr. Fisher, who's the deputy director of our disarmament agency. We stressed the effort we were going to put into the disarmament conference coming up in March. I saw the ladies myself. I recognized why they were there. There were a great number of them. It was in the rain. I understood what they were attempting to say, and therefore I considered that their message was received.
In Oklahoma City today, Senator Barry Goldwater was the final speaker at a two-day conference of the Republican National Committee. In his speech, Mr. Goldwater declared that the Republicans lost in 1960 because the party failed to shape a clear conservative image. At a recent debate with 77-year-old socialist Norman Thomas, Mr. Goldwater articulated key elements of his conservative philosophy, starting with an attack on the nation's progressive income tax system.
The income tax is a tax of great inequity. Over 80% of the taxes come from the so-called working class. This isn't what we call equitable taxation. The graduated income tax is a tax upon initiative and success, certainly not in keeping with the American idea. But the peculiar thing about taxes, no matter how we spend our tax money, in the last nearly 30 years, we never seem to solve the problems that Mr. Thomas is concerned about. We have, according to the census and according to Mr. Thomas, 31 million people today in this country who live substandardly. Yes, we conservatives are concerned about that. We're concerned that in nearly 30 years of the so-called liberal or socialist application, they haven't done anything about it. Now, if it hasn't been solved under the socialist or the liberal approach, then I think it's time that Americans allow conservatism an opportunity to show them how we can alleviate the sufferings of the people and raise their living standards.
Mr. Goldwater, whose Cold War rhetoric has been criticized by some as too militant, spoke on foreign affairs as well.
I am just as totally against war as Mr. Thomas or any liberal or socialist in this country. I don't want to think of the day coming when my children or my grandchildren have to go to war. But I'm not afraid of war. And I don't think the average American is. Neither is the average American advocating war. But the average American is a very realistic person. He knows, as I know and conservatives know, that as much as we'd like to believe that by disarming, by abandoning nuclear tests, Khrushchev might change his mind and become a nice boy overnight, it isn't going to happen. History shows us that. I think the day's coming. I think it's a long ways off.
Finally, the senator expressed his faith in America's founding principles.
I think when the day comes that America makes up its mind to a man, to a person, that we are going to live under the concepts of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, which recognizes us as being endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, when we recognize that we have a responsibility to that Creator to live as if we believe these freedoms came from Him, we're going to become such a beacon light in this world that the whole world is going to want to be like the United States, not be like communism, to which 1/3 of the people of this world have been attracted since World War II. I believe that the American system is the greatest system ever devised by man. Why do people want to come to this country if we're in such bad shape? We can't begin to handle the millions of immigrants who want to come here. My concern as a conservative is that we are slowly but surely destroying the very attractiveness of our government and our economic system by restraining people in their free actions, by concentrating government more and more in one central point in this country, in Washington.
Senator Goldwater is viewed as a potential presidential candidate, but some believe he's too conservative to mount a serious challenge to President Kennedy in 1964. John Wayne added his name today to a long list of acting luminaries, including Henry Fonda, Robert Mitchum, Richard Burton, Peter Lawford, and Rod Steiger, now scheduled to appear in the black and white war epic The Longest Day. The film, currently before the cameras in Europe, deals with the D-Day landings at Normandy on June 6, 1944. The cast includes several World War II veterans, including 42-year-old Richard Todd, who served with the 7th British Parachute Battalion and was among the first British officers to land in Normandy. Mr. Wayne will portray Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Vandervoort, the U.S. Army officer who broke his ankle parachuting into enemy territory on D-Day, but continued to command his troops while being pulled about in a munitions cart until the beachhead was secure. Sports, right after this.
For the young and the old, the sick and the troubled, give the United Way.
With 2 seconds remaining in the NFL Pro Bowl yesterday, Baltimore's Johnny Unitas threw a 12-yard touchdown pass to John Arnett of the Rams to give the West a thrilling 31-30 victory over the East. Just a few minutes earlier, Cleveland's outstanding fullback Jim Brown had shaken off 4 tacklers and run 70 yards for a touchdown that put the East ahead 30-24. The game, played in sunny 71-degree weather in Los Angeles, featured numerous defensive highlights as well, including an interception by Detroit cornerback Dick Night Train Lane, which he then ran 42 yards for a touchdown. Winners and losers profited from the contest. Each player on the West earned $800, while each member of the East received $600. And that, for this evening, completes our look at the latest news on this Monday, January 15th, 1962. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day tomorrow.
This has been your Evening Report, a roundup of the latest news with Joe Rubenstein.